Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BJA Fiscal Year 23 Second Chance Act Pay for Success Initiative Kickoff webinar. First and foremost, I want to congratulate each and every one of you for submitting applications. You were selected from a very large pool of applicants. This is a really exciting moment. So thank you. Next. Today, we're going to be joined by my colleague, Michael Dever, who's the Division Chief here at the Bureau of Justice Assistance. My other colleague is Charlie Francis, who's the Deputy Program Director at the Council of State Governments Justice Center. He will be the lead for the technical assistance that will be provided to each of you, the team lead. You'll meet some of his team members as we start to assign you to a technical assistance provider. And I am yours truly, Andre Bethia, your Senior Policy Advisor here at the Bureau of Justice Assistance. Next slide. So we have a pretty packed agenda. We're going to go into the welcome and introduction so that you know the difference between OJP, BGA, and of course your technical assistance provider at the Council of State Governments Justice Center. Definitely provide a program overview, talk about post-award management and federal compliance, which is very important, right? You're a recipient of a federal grant. Then we're going to go into grants management overview, what happens when you're getting started, next steps, and leave you off with some resources. Next. So let's get settled. Again, we do have a packed agenda. I won't be the only voice talking. You already saw the list of presenters, so let's jump into the welcome and introduction. So again, welcome, congratulations. I'm going to ask that you please introduce yourself in the chat section by just stating your name, city, state, and organization. Also, as we continue in the presentation, use that chat function to ask any questions that you may have. Next. So we have polls. And the first poll I want you all to respond to is, what is your role in Just Grants, right? Are you the grant award administrator? Are you the alternate grant administrator? Perhaps you are the financial manager. Maybe you're the authorized representative. And lastly, you could be the entity administrator. You could have more than one role, but definitely select the most salient role. I'll give you some time to fill that in. I know I asked for two things. I asked for everybody to introduce themselves in the chat, and then I jumped out with a poll question. So I want to give you an opportunity to get all that accomplished. So we'll take about a minute. Again, after you drop your intro into the chat, definitely make sure you select the poll. We have an attendee poll. And team, if we have enough responses, we can move on and show the graph. Okay, great. Looks like we have an overwhelming grant award administrators here. Welcome. We have a few authorized representatives, and then we have others as well as entity administrators. So again, welcome. Whatever role you're playing and in the grant administration of this particular award for Second Chance Act Pay for Success, we're happy to have you on the call. Next. All right then. So the Office of Justice Programs is like the philanthropic arm of the Department of Justice, right? We provide grant funding, training, research, and statistics to the criminal justice community. OJP is one of three grant-making components of the Department of Justice, along with the Office on Violence Against Women, as well as the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services. So you can look at the list and see that we have the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the National Institute of Justice, the Office for Victims of Crime, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, the Office of Sex Offender Sentencing, Monitoring, Apprehending, Registering, and Tracking. And at the very top, you have the Bureau of Justice Assistance. Next. So, we here at BJA believe it is our mission to provide leadership and services of criminal and grants administration and criminal justice policy development to support state, local, and tribal justice strategies to achieve safer communities. BJA works with communities, governments like yourself, and nonprofit organizations to reduce crime, recidivism, and unnecessary confinement, and to promote a safe and fair criminal justice system. Currently, our BJA director is Carlton F. Moore. Next slide. Now, how does BJA support the field? Well, through investments, right? We provide diverse funding to accomplish goals, which is what you have as a grant. Sharing knowledge, we research, develop, and deliver what works to build capacity and improve outcomes. And then engagement, right? We consult, connect, and convene. And at some point, all of you will have the opportunity, or representatives from your particular agencies will have the opportunity, hopefully in the future, to connect and work with not only other Second Chance Act grantees, but definitely those working in the Pay for Success work. So, next slide. So this is Second Chance Act funding, right? This is the funding to reduce recidivism and improve outcomes for youth and adults leaving detention and incarceration to return to their communities. So it was initially signed in 2008, and it was reauthorized in 2018 under the First Step Act. Well, this supports state, local, and tribal governments as well as nonprofits. And to date, over $500 million in grants to develop, implement, and test strategies has been administered. Next. So BJA Second Chance Act funding, right? There's grant funding, and then there's funding for training and technical assistance to grantees. So with grant funding, right, that's seed money, right? Proof of concept to expand or enhance existing programs. Then we also provide Second Chance Act funding for training and technical assistance, we call it TTA, to grantees so that they work on evidence-based practices, right, with fidelity, work in line with what we know works in research, and also to think about project management and content expertise, especially as it relates to Pay for Success. Also, the Second Chance Act funding provides for the National Reentry Resource Center to support not just Second Chance Act training and technical assistance providers, but the reentry field at large. Next. Another word about the National Reentry Resource Center. The Council of State Governments Justice Center operates the NRRC as a collaborative project of both BJA and the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. The primary mission of this National Reentry Resource Center is to advance the knowledge base of the reentry field. The NRRC serves as a convener and coordinator of Second Chance Act grantees. Next. So we sort of kind of want to break it down. There's a great deal of information happening, right? So within the fiscal year 23 Second Chance Act Pay for Success initiative, right, there are 6 grantees, and we're going to identify you. The funder is the Bureau of Justice Assistance. That'll be Michael, my colleague Michael, and I. Your training and technical assistance provider, right, is the CSG Justice Center. Charlie Francis here representing CSG Justice Center, as well as another unit within CSG Justice Center operates the National Reentry Resource Center website. And you'll learn more about them as we go along in the project if you're not already familiar. So just sort of kind of identifying the key programming partners, since we're throwing around a lot of words and acronyms. Next. I'll hand it over to you, Charlie.
Thanks so much, Andre. So great to have you all with us today. Again, I'm Charlie Francis, Deputy Program Director at the CSG Justice Center. I oversee our national training and technical assistance work focused on especially reentry housing. I'm very excited to be here with you today. So the CSD Justice Center, we're a national organization. We're a membership organization for all three branches of state government, which is CSG at large. And at the Justice Center, we really focus on providing policy solutions and training and technical assistance really within all aspects of the criminal justice system to really help advance, fair and equitable policy solutions through connections to housing, employment, and many other different policy areas, including this one. So we're really excited to work with you. And like Andre said, in this area, we are the training and technical assistance provider for this work. And so we deliver training and technical assistance for Second Chance Act grantees through this program. Our chief focus is development of contracts that are performance-based, that tie outcomes for payment for services to reaching agreed upon goals. So what does that mean? So we work with you on this program to really help you understand, what you're trying to do, really help you develop your program model, understand who you're trying to serve, really think through your outcomes, how you're measuring your outcomes. And really, as you're working through developing these outcomes-based contracts, it can get complicated, really drawing on our expertise, our resources, our internal experts, our connections with other experts, and all sorts of other resources that we have, and working with you on an ongoing basis, really just to ensure that you're successful and that you can really work to meet the needs in your community in the most effective way possible. Again, through content expertise, ongoing project management support, and like I said, connection to peer networks and resources. And on the next slide, we have a little diagram just kind of showing how this works. The centerpiece of our model is your monthly calls with your TA coach. And our team will be reaching out to you soon if they haven't already to set up our first calls with you. And, through our TTA, you have your monthly calls. And, so each month you'll be talking through your project, kind of where you're at, your next steps, which initially focus on working through your planning deliverables, which we'll talk about a little bit later on this call. But also through those TA calls, we connect you with a variety of other resources, including peer learning, access to experts, and a variety of resources and tools that we have. In other words, we are here to work with you on an ongoing basis and really to ensure that you can be successful. Next slide, please. So now I'll hand it back to Andre to give more of an overview of how the program works.
Thank you, Charlie. I greatly appreciate that. Okay, everyone, we're going to kind of go into the program overview section, which is section 2. Next slide. So the Second Chance Act Pay for Success initiative began in fiscal year 2019. To date, we've made about $23 million total in awards to 22 grantees throughout the nation. You'll see that in blue, right, those are your grantee cohorts that already exist. And in yellow, you'll see the fiscal year 23 grantees. So I'll just keep this here for a minute so you can see that there are 3 grant recipients within the state of Pennsylvania, right? They're not all Pennsylvania, but they're within the state. So one is the Pennsylvania Department of Correction, but the others are Beaver County and other pieces. So I just want to make sure we talk about some of the nuances. So you're like, 3 grants with the Pennsylvania? Well, no, the 3 grants went into work that's obviously within Pennsylvania. And I believe the other one is Allegheny County, Pennsylvania. So Charlie, you can correct me if I got that wrong. Next slide. So again, I want to reach out and say a true congratulations to each and every one of you. We want to welcome Anchorage, Alaska, Kauai County, Hawaii, and I'm hoping you're going to correct me and teach me how to pronounce that. King County, Washington, shout out to Seattle, Las Vegas, Nevada, and Weber Housing Authority over in Utah. Again, congratulations on your awards. Next slide. So now we got to go into what's really going on. The Pay for Success, right, is a performance-based and outcomes-based programming that ties payment for services to reaching agreed upon goals. This is a contracting circumstance, whether it's reentry, whether it's permanent supportive housing. It's about deal structuring. Under this initiative, services that may be purchased include a wide range of reentry services that are tailored to individuals leaving incarceration, particularly those with substance use disorders, as well as permanent supportive housing. Next slide. The fiscal year 2023 Second Chance Act Pay for Success initiative aims to enhance public safety, lower recidivism, and provide the lives of people coming out of the criminal justice, improve the lives of people coming out of the criminal justice system. The goals for each category are to increase access to programming for and reduce recidivism and the target reentry population. So again, category 1, performance-based and outcomes-based contracting for reentry services. Category 2, performance-based and outcomes-based contracting for permanent supportive housing, or PSH. Next slide. So let's start to talk about category 1 for reentry, right? As the solicitation states, it's about enhancing already established performance-based and outcomes-based contracts to provide individualized reentry services for people leaving incarceration who are identified through a validated risk tool as being moderate or high risk to reoffend in the community. For those in category 1 that are selected, that means, yes, you must have a validated risk assessment tool. Manage the performance-based or outcomes-based reentry services contract, including data and report collection, regular performance and outcome reviews between the government and the service provider, on and off-site monitoring, outcomes validation, and incentivized payment approvals. That means there must be milestones, things must be achievable, they must be achieved, and then there's outcome payments, right? We're hoping to challenge each of you, this is for category 1, to think critically about the deal structures that are in your contracts and how to improve them. We want to ensure government staff and service providers have adequate training on performance-based or outcomes-based procurement, reentry services, data collection, and outcomes validation. BJA, as well as our technical assistance provider, does not intend to leave you out there all alone. We will provide training for you, for your team, for your respective county, and for your stakeholders, including your providers. This includes data collection, outcomes validation, and all that is surrounding the Pay for Success initiative. Next slide. So now we're going to discuss category 2, right? Permanent supportive housing. So let's start off by saying we are talking housing first. We're talking permanent supportive housing as an evidence-based model, right? We're not talking about where you come up with something homegrown. No. So you're into performance-based or outcomes-based contracts to provide evidence-based, high-quality permanent supportive housing to formerly incarcerated individuals who have a substance use disorder, right? For those grantees that are part of category 2, that means to manage the performance-based or outcomes-based PSH contract, including data and report collection, regular performance and outcome reviews between governments and service providers, on and off-site monitoring, performance and outcomes validation, and incentive payment approvals, all built within a milestone structure, built within a timeline, right? So we want to ensure government staff and service providers have adequate training on performance-based or outcomes-based procurement, right? PSH as a whole, data collection, and outcomes validation. Let me say this. For those grantees that are part of category 2, again, we do have technical assistance, right, at the Council of State Governors Justice Center, as well as subject matter experts that are a part of our National Reentry Resource Center network to help each of you, to train you, to talk widely about permanent supportive housing, especially as a housing first model, right? To talk about outcomes validation, incentive payment approvals, and all the wonderful things that are part of the Pay for Success initiative. This is a process. It will not happen overnight. This grant runs to 60 months, unlike many other Second Chance Act grants, which are 36 months. So there's a great deal of deal structuring and conversation and approval. So there's the step-by-step process. Next slide. Now we're talking about some of the program deliverables, right? This is where we really start to engage you on how do we get there. What I said milestones earlier, I said process, I said deal structuring. So an analysis that demonstrates reentry service or permanent supportive housing based on which category, right? Using data indicating the number and needs of the people to be served. You may have had an idea when you were writing the grant. We're going to come through collectively, BJA, as well as our TA providers, the Council of State Governments Justice Center, to help you fine tune that. Analysis that demonstrates the performance targets or outcomes selected for payment. Again, you wrote a proposal. We want to be responsive to what you wrote. We just want to make sure that's the most salient piece that makes the most sense, right? Analysis that demonstrates the grantee's decision about the performance-based or outcomes-based contract structure, repayment strategy, and timing of pay loans. So we're looking at a timeline and one that's useful. Revised procurement contracts. That's always interesting. We will provoke, challenge, and encourage you to rethink, retool, and revise contracts. And finally, a closeout report, including a listing and description of the performance targets or outcomes achieved and the payments obviously made. Next slide. So, focus areas. Obviously, for this particular Second Chance Act Pay for Success initiative, we have Category 1, reentry services, Category 2, permanent supportive housing as an evidence-based, right? Not your homegrown version, one that honors housing first. The use of data analysis for outcomes, right? Being data-driven, data-informed for selected payment, as well as determination of contract structure. Clear identification of a target population through data, what makes sense and why. Ongoing reporting on contract through the term reports and contract progress through the training and technical assistance that is provided for you. Again, it's an arduous process. We will get there collectively, and we look forward to working with you. Next slide. Now I want to shift to post-award management and federal compliance through my colleague, Michael Dever. Michael?
Hey, thank you, Andre, and welcome everybody. I know it's been a long process, but congratulations, and I hope you're ready to get started. Next slide, please. So the BJ Programs Office role, I think many of you worked with Zafra Stork, who maybe in resolving budget issues and things like that initially. She has left to an exciting opportunity she's providing social services to U.S. military in London. So Kevin Gates has joined us. He is your new grant management specialist. And I'm going to cover, thanks, Kevin. I'm going to cover the Programs Office role. It's really a three-legged stool. We have Andre providing the competitive process and the vision of the program and ensuring congressional intent, and we have the TA provider providing subject matter expertise. And for the Programs Office, our role is your first line point of contact for the Bureau of Justice Assistance regarding the grant administration, the administration of your award. So we're here to accept with you for accepting the award, accessing funds, compliance with award conditions, reviewing and approving performance reports. If you submit a grant award modification to change the scope or adjust your budget or adjust withholding special conditions, those grant modifications are going to go right to Kevin. Training and technical assistance. If you mention in your performance reports that you are lacking or you want assistance, I mean, certainly you don't have to wait to mention it in the progress report. You can pick up the phone at any time and let Kevin know, and he'll work with Andre and Council of State Governments to provide you that TA support. And then grant closeout procedures. Next slide. Oh, hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you, Michael. I think we just lost you for a second.
Oh, okay.
Audio only, but we can hear you.
Are your slides up?
Yep, the slides are still here.
Okay. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I have no idea what happened.
I think if you just turn your camera back on Zoom, we should be good. Yeah, we got you.
Okay. Okay. All right. Wasn't expecting that. So the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, so they provide, there are financial support. So everything you send to us, we will review it for programmatic acceptability, approval, allowable costs, unallowable costs. But the Chief Financial Officer office has the final say in terms of they will go through the level of detail that's required and make sure the calculations are correct and the indirect cost rates are applied according to the agreements. And we will facilitate whatever questions remain with you, if there's questions on that, or if you still have outstanding budget clearance. Same thing for budget modifications. They also have the customer service centers. If throughout the life of your grant you have questions on financial reporting and the form and aspects that where to report what obligations versus expenditures, things like that. And we have contact information, and we'll share the slides with you so that you have all this information as a reference for future to either answer your questions, or you can reference when you speak to us to resolve some of any issues in the future. Next slide. Okay, so Just Grants post-award user roles. It's critical that you have these assigned roles, and I see we have a bunch of grant award administrators, entity administrators, and authorized representatives. The financial managers, each of you will need to assign a financial manager in order to submit those financial status reports. The Just Grants system doesn't allow anyone but the financial manager, the assigned role for that, or their backup, to submit the quarterly financial reports. And if those become delinquent, then the funds are withheld, things like that. Grants award administrators, same role, only for performance reporting. They're the only ones, and their backup they're the only ones allowed to submit those reports. Entity administrator, if they're in charge of assigning all the roles, of course, and also make sure that their registration is always up to date. It's an annual registration in sam.gov. And so we ask that entity administrators are crucial for keeping that in good standing. And authorized representatives, of course, they're authorized to oversee the awards and sign and accept the award agreements. Next slide. And we have a poll question. Has your organization been awarded federal grants in the past? And we'll give about 30 seconds, I guess. So the selections are yes, extensive experience, yes, not currently, but have in the past. Next one, my organization has limited experience, and lastly, new to the federal grant system. And Joey, let me know when we're ready. Okay, we have a very experienced group in here. 67, 2/3 of you have extensive experience with federal grants, and 1/3 of you have limited experience, but some experience at least. Thank you. Next slide, please. We'll go through grants management overview. Next slide. Here we'll discuss the major milestones of the award. So you've been through the application phase, you've been through the competitive selection process successfully, and now the milestones for actually administering the award for the life of the grant. We'll follow this cycle: award acceptance, accessing funds, award conditions, and the like. We've structured the presentation so that we'll go through each of these milestones now. Next slide, please. This is your landing page for the Just Grant system. Just wanted to provide this as a just sort of get your bearings for those maybe that aren't the grant award administrator, just to get a feel for it. For grant award administrators, whenever you're going to take an action, it's a unique quirk of the system that there's a little begin button circled in red that you need to click the begin button before you can take any actions. Next slide. And so the award package is information. If you scroll down further beyond the begin button, further down the page, you'll see the award package, as well as a host of other headings that to go delve further deeper into your award documents. You can see the award document, the award conditions. Next slide. So the award conditions are very important. These will let you know the specific rules and regulations that you need to adhere to. And also, we always typically at the end of the award conditions list any withholding conditions that need to be addressed. Next slide. Okay, and accessing funds, for those of you that are experienced, that have federal experiences, you don't need to do anything new, but you just need to ensure your SAM.gov registration, your entity administrators, ensure that annual re-registration is current. And also, there's SAM.gov, you want to make sure that you don't create a new UEI number when you're re-registering. Just a heads up that it's a common mistake, I mean, 20–30% maybe, accidentally create a new UEI number, and it just creates a 2-month process just unraveling that. But we can support when it's time to re-register. If you have questions, let us know and we can help with that. So accessing funds, ASAP registration, enrollment, making sure your award conditions are, all the withholdings are addressed, and your SAM.gov registration is current. Next slide. Okay, if you're a new OJP recipient, your entity administrator will receive 2 emails. If for those 1/3 of you that are less experienced, again, if you have an active federal award, you're not going to need to do anything else. You're ASAP enrolled. But if it's been a while since you've had a federal award, you may need, and you need to re-enroll in ASAP, then we can follow these links or ask us. Next slide. So award conditions. When I mentioned what award conditions 1 through 30, when I said we put them at the end, the first 30 conditions are on every award that leaves our Office of Justice Programs or Department of Justice. Those 30 awards apply to everyone. From numbers 31 and above are unique to the Pay for Success program. And next slide. So you may have withholding special conditions if your budget hasn't cleared yet. And the reasons the budget hasn't cleared is you may be not just the level of detail that is required is not sufficient. Like travel costs, we need to make sure the number of days, the number of hotel nights and they're at the GSA rate. So there's just specific things, levels of detail that we'll need. And if you are struggling through that, we can certainly help about what the typical travel breakdown is or whatever cost categories giving you some trouble. Award condition. So when you address the withholding aspect of it, Kevin will initiate an award condition modification and switch it from non-compliant to compliant, and that will release access to the funding. Let me see. Next slide, please. The one condition that's unique to Pay for Success that's on everyone's award, some of those other one-offs are withholding conditions, or if your budget is having issues or you haven't completed the financial management training online, then things like that could withhold funding. But all of you as a group have this condition, and it's that you have access for up to $200,000 initially for the first 12 months for the sole purpose of researching, pricing, writing, negotiating, and finalizing service contracts. Once those and work with Council of State Governments, Andre and the programs, once those service contracts are approved, Kevin will release the remainder of the funds. But so just know that for now, if it takes you 4 months to complete the contracts, then we're going to release everything in excess of $200,000 in 4 months. If it takes 12 months, then that's the goal. Next slide, please. Financial budget clearance. There's common reasons a budget could not be cleared. Hopefully you guys are a little bit beyond this phase now, but if you do still have budget clearance issues, then we need to work with you. We have a very small percentage from 2023 that still don't have budget modifications or budget final clearances. So let us know immediately, because that's a high priority to get all the 2023 grants, their budgets cleared, so you can get underway. Next slide. Oh, I think I just saw a question pop up in the chat. Yes, these slides will be shared because a lot of helpful links are embedded, as well as just take a deeper dive into these each of these grant milestones. Unallowable costs. We do have some of these. Food and beverages is a big one, with Second Chance Act, gift cards, prizes, rewards, etc. Sometimes pop up. There's new prohibited controlled equipment. That's executive order, and it really doesn't apply to Second Chance so much. It's the prohibition on using grant funds to purchase rifles with 50 caliber above and ammunition, things like that. Lobbying fundraiser, I think you all certify for that. And costs that do not support the approved project. That's a general overall reason for unallowability. Next slide. Grants financial management training. This is within the first 120 days. And so some of you that are experienced grant recipients, then you only need to complete the training once every 2 years. So if you, for another award, you've already completed the training, you're good to go. But you will need to take it whenever the tracking list shows that it's beyond 2 years for the grant award administrator and the financial manager. Every 3 years. it's every 3 years now, so that's even better. And then submit grants financial management training certificates to Kevin, and then we will log that as part of the award file, and you'll be good for 3 years if you're not already based on another report, another award. Oh, thanks, Charlie. Coaches maintain this information for you too. Next slide. A big topic that comes up with Second Chance, all Second Chance Act awards, not just pay for success, but is something a sub-award or a contract. And so we have supportive tools online. You can click the live link there. But for sub-awards, those are awards that a sub-award is determined to be a sub-award based on the activities being provided. Does the sub-award have programmatic decision-making ability or authority? If so, that's not going to be a procurement contract assigned to the lowest bidder. It's going to be more of a partnership that you select people, organizations that have this and administer this responsibility, things like that. On the other hand, procurement contract provides goods and services, fairly straightforward, provides goods and services that are ancillary to the fulfillment of the federal program, accomplishment of the federal program. We'll go further into next slides. Next slide, please. Okay, so if it is a sub-award, you need to treat it like a sub-award, and we have guidelines on what to do with that in terms of all the award conditions that you have on your grant award as the prime recipient must be transferred down to the sub-award so that they're adhering to the federal requirements as well as you. Next slide. For FATA reporting for any sub-award over $30,000 is required, and that's unique. That's not for procurement contracts, just for sub-awards. Next slide. And then for the DOJ financial guide, we also have guidelines and helpful hints on how to administer the procurement contracts. These, of course, have to be competed wherever possible. So the threshold that requires approval from the Bureau of Justice Assistance is if the contract's going to be over $250,000. If it's under $250,000, the expectation and requirement is that you'll follow your own internal procurement policies. So if your own internal procurement policies require anything above $10,000, get 3 quotes and be published for 2 weeks as an RFP, things like that, you need to adhere and treat the federal dollars just as you would your own organization's funding. There is an opportunity for sole source, but the threshold is high, and we really want to encourage, if whenever at all possible, for procurement, that federal tax dollars, grant funds be competed. Next slide. Your reporting responsibilities. So the financial reports, they're all due quarterly, and then based on this timeline, and semi-annual performance reports. The performance metrics tool is required quarterly, so you're reporting on financial reports quarterly, and also performance reporting quarterly in the performance metrics tool. But then you only need to upload the PDF files from the performance metrics tool into Just Grants twice a year to fulfill the requirements and prevent any withholding of funds that happens after, usually I think it's a 2-week grace period if you're late. After that, funds could be you could lose access to grant funding. Next slide. All right, so federal, just important tips. Financial reports report funds obligated and or expended, not drawdown amounts. We are aware and can monitor the drawdown amounts in our internal systems, but what we're asking for in the quarterly financial reports is that you list what's obligated, meaning to a contractor or subaward. Those funds are, they're spoken for. And then versus expended, that means you've drawn down and reimbursed your subawards or yourselves or your own agencies. Performance reports, let me see, my pop-up screen's blocking. Performance measures, answer them directly in Just Grants award. Let me see. Okay, that performance reporting, this slide is not accurate. I apologize. This is, we have the performance metrics tool, which all grantees need to, all second chance pay for success grantees need to report into. There are some very unique programs that require you to report directly in the Just Grants. This is not one of them. So when we send out the slides, we'll swap out this slide on and provide you with PMT, performance metrics tools, guidance on performance reporting. Next slide. Okay, grant award modifications overview. Grant, so programmatic, we have different types, and you'll be asked in Just Grants what type you'd like to submit. So if you're asking for programmatic costs that might require prior approval, you can just submit. So if you're working with the grantee, and you're working with on implementation of your award, and you find out that you need a contract or a subaward added for a certain level of activities that was missing in your initial application, and as you've gone into implementation, you feel like it is required, then you can submit requests if it doesn't impact the budget. So if your budget, say for subawards, is $200,000, and you're just going to swap out the maybe $20,000 subaward for another $20,000 subaward, those types of GAMs you can submit for programmatic cost approval. Scope change GAMs, this is where you add a new subaward, change the project site. If you change the population that you're targeting for serving, that would be a scope change GAM. Make sure there's an option in Just Grants to select changing the purpose of the project. That's rarely going to ever be the case, and it requires 2 levels above us for approval, and they rarely get approved. So we'll work with you to decide, are you really changing the purpose of the project? Meaning second chance pay for success is not the goal, then it's likely not the case, and it's really maybe cost requiring prior approval. So we'll help you select that. Where there's financial type GAMs, the budget clearance GAMs, your initial one that OCFO issues for a financial clearance, but also throughout the life of your grant, you can submit budget modifications. And if at any point through the life of your award that the cumulative changes of approved cost categories exceeds 10%, so if you have personnel at $100,000 for $1 million award and you want to change 20,000 of that, then you're going to go, or you change more than 100,000 of that, then for $1 million award, you're going to require a budget modification. So at your own discretion, though, if you have an approved cost category and you want to shift funds to another approved cost category for travel, say, or you want to eliminate travel and send it up to personnel, you can do that without a budget modification. But you need to adhere, or you need to keep track of that, because if at any point you exceed 10% shift among budget categories during the life of the grant, you need a budget modification. formal submitted. Sole source GAMs, so like procurement we were talking about, if you do want to try to get a sole source contract approved, then there's a mechanism in the GAM system to do that. Next slide, please. And then for project period extension is another common GAM. And so just make sure that if 30 days before the end of your grant period, if you know that you're going to require more time, you can submit a project period extension at no cost. So you typically would ask, we're able to grant up to 12 months for a relatively low threshold. If you want any additional time above 12 months, then it requires just full justification, and we need to seek special approval from the director and the chief financial officer. But just make sure, and you don't need to wait. If you know now that, well, you guys are new 2023 awards, but if say in 2025 that you're aware based on something like prior grantees experienced the pandemic, they knew right away that they had a halt in implementation, they needed more time, and they wanted to issue contracts with their contractors being assured that they have enough time in the life of their award, then things like that, you can, at your discretion, you can ask us before 30 days prior to the end date. So you can do that. Next slide. In-depth monitoring. OJP conducts formal in-depth monitoring of 10% of our active awards. So Kevin may reach out to you to advise you. We ask between 30 and 45 days, we'll send a letter giving you notice and letting you work out a time to schedule it. And then we'll be looking through the general ledgers and their invoices and just reviewing a lot of the documentation and checking on progress to make sure it lines up with the performance reporting. And also, there's a subset of awards that will receive in-depth financial reports of financial reviews directly from our Office of Chief Financial Officer. And it's also possible some unlucky grantees, the Office of Inspector General also conducts a portion of in-depth monitoring, very in-depth, for a very small portion of grantees. And then there'll be an entrance interview, meeting with the key grant representatives, and then a letter will be issued identifying any issues for resolution and offering technical assistance to address them. Next slide. And then closeout. Last milestone. All obligations must be incurred by the end date of the award. So as long as all grant activities are accomplished by the project period end date, you have 120 days beyond that to actually settle the invoices and pay for any activities that occurred prior to the end date. But there can't be any new invoices generated based on new activities that occur outside the active award period. And that's where an extension, if you know you need activities like an evaluation or component or something like that, that's gonna just need more time, then you submit again asking for an extension. Final performance reports, final financial reports, and final drawdown. As part of the closeout process, we will do a reconciliation to make sure that your final financial report and the drawdown amounts line up, and your final performance report speaks to accomplishments that line up with the amount of expenditures. And then, so with that, that's a lot of information. Again, we'll provide this to you to maintain for the life of the grant. But with that, I'll turn it back to Andre and Charlie for the next component.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate that that overview. Let me just pull up my little we're gonna show here. Joy, if you could just go to the next slide. Great. Yeah, so now that everybody is getting started, it's really important to give you all an overview, of all the different policies and procedures around this program. We'd really like to give you an overview. To make sure my video was on. Really like to give you an overview, of all, different requirements that you have to meet, throughout the life of the program. Give you a sense of what the different requirements are, the different BJA systems where you have to go to find the information. But again, don't feel like you need to internalize all this information right now. Both BJA and us are here to help you. To remind you where to find this information. We're always just a phone call or an email away. And for my portion here, I want to just give you a little bit of an overview of, how we actually get started with the work. And so in terms of the planning process, that's the phase that you're going to be in, for the first 12 months or so of this work. And that's not a strict 12 months, sometimes it might be a little more or a little bit less. But particularly in this grant track, a real emphasis of the TA coaching is making sure, you've submitted your application and it's been successful, really putting forth a vision of how you're going to stand up either a reentry services or a housing program that's designed, to meet the most pressing needs in your community. But really, we're really going to work with you to make sure that you really refine the analysis of the needs, make sure that we're really refining the outcomes, that you want to reach, and that you're connecting that analysis of the needs that you see and those outcomes to create an outcomes-based contract that is structured in a way that really makes sense, with your provider to help incentivize the outcomes that you want to see in this project. Sometimes that can be a little bit complicated, but we have a track record of success of working with grantees just like you to help make this work, and so that's what we're here for. And that will really be the focus of the beginning phase of this grant. And so there's $200,000 of grant funds available to help support this initial planning work, and your TTA coach, a member of our staff, is going to be your guide throughout this process. And you'll work with us to complete, your planning deliverables. And you'll often hear them referred to as deliverable 1, 2, and 3, which I'll go into in a minute. And that really is the focus to really help you understand what you need to do and how to do it. And once you complete those deliverables, you move from the planning into the implementation phase. And what that means is then BJA, once they approve those deliverables, they remove the special withholding conditions that Michael was talking about earlier. And that allows you to actually move into the implementation phase. And then we continue working with you to help you really, set up your program for implementation and help you work with you on any ongoing issues that arise, including monitoring, evaluation, and eventually working towards closeout. Next slide. So a little more about the planning phase and, the 3 key deliverables that you'll be working with us on. Analysis 1 is service need. So you're looking at demonstrating, and you've already started to think about this, in your application, demonstrating the need for reentry services or housing, including specific data requirements for each grant category. So really showing, us and showing BJA that you understand what the top needs are in your community. So really linking, showing that you have done the analysis, that you have clear and measurable data sources, showing that you're linking the need to what you propose to do. And then your second analysis is linking that need to measurable outcomes. So that is really, we often look at these 2 deliverables together, And we really work with you to help think this through. That's often the focus of several of our initial calls, and help you write this up into a really coherent narrative. It might be really close to what you initially propose. You might have some new ideas, and we might help, challenge and push you a little bit, either just working with your TA coach, making some connections with other peers or other experts, in, other fields, in housing, Medicaid, et cetera, to really help you, think through working with different disciplines or different policy areas to help make your program the best it can be. And we provide other support. We're going to develop a series of learning community sessions, resources, and other support, to really help you support, like Andre was saying earlier, you're not alone in this. And we're really going to help you, give you the resources that you need. Next slide. And then the third deliverable, because we submit all 3 deliverables typically together to BJA for approval, is actually deciding how you're going to structure your performance or outcomes-based contract. Typically these are outcomes-based contract. So you select a provider, you decide what your key outcomes are going to be, and the top outcome that must be in these contracts is reduction in recidivism. And if you're working on permanent supportive housing, we typically look for housing stability metrics as well too. And so in that third deliverable, there are lots of different ways to structure these outcomes-based contracts, and we can work with you on what those different options are. And you want to have an analysis that demonstrates, what that contract structuring decision is, what are some meaningful incentives, to ensure that the provider is getting those results, and how you're going to monitor that contract over time to make sure that you're getting the results that you want. And then as you move into implementation and through implementation, oh, sorry, I'm not there yet. And so we submit those to BJA for approval, and then we remove the withholding conditions. Next slide. And then as we move into the implementation phase, there's a first year of contract term report that we submit to BJA. And then later on, there's also a closeout report where we list and describe the performance targets, outcomes achieved, and the payments made. Next slide. I guess that's it for that section. So we have a little bit of material on the next steps. I believe we're going to hand it back briefly to Andre to talk a little bit more through that.
Thank you, Charlie, and my sincere thanks to you, Charlie, and to your team for the work that you've done thus far with Second Chance Act Pay for Success, and will continue to do with this new cohort from fiscal year 2023. My sincere thanks to my colleague, Michael Daver, for being a part of this presentation, as well as welcoming my latest and newest colleague, Kevin Gates, on the work that he's going to do with all of you, which leads us into the next slide. So next step is contact Kevin. You want to contact your BJ programs about the budget clearance. We will have Kevin Gates' email listed below when we get to the end of the program. I don't believe anyone made it through the final budget before we shifted to away from Zafra, but there could be. But please contact Kevin Gates via email. The next piece is that you're going to set up a monthly call with your technical assistance provider. Charlie is the lead of a great and wonderful team, so we're going to get that established. There's always a pause between what you wrote and when you actually get awarded, and then when the actual work starts. So I think the first order of business, right, after you contact, Kevin, and sort of kind of set up the monthly call, CSG will reach out to each and every one of you. But we're going to review the narrative and start to do the work to go forward, to press forward. And then we want to complete the planning deliverables, right? There's 3 analysis, there's 3 parts, 3 things that make sense. And so we have a lot of work to cover. I just want to remind this group, this team, that, this effort, the Second Chance Act Pay for Success is, the time frame is much longer than any other Second Chance Act grant program. So, and that's because there is a great deal of retooling, reconfiguring, rethinking, repurposing, and just reimagining. So let's brace ourselves and be patient about the road ahead. Next steps. Next steps, next slide. Resources. Is this me or is this you, Charlie?
It's back to me again, Andre.
Okay, great. Back to you, Charlie.
Next slide, please. Yeah, so we just have a actually, I'll just say a word about the first calls first. My team actually has reached out to the main point of contact for all of the new grantees at this point to get an email going about setting up a first call this month. So that thread should be started. So yeah, if anybody hasn't received that email, or if there's any questions or concerns, you can just let me know, and my email is actually going to be on the next slide too, if you need that. But here on this slide, we just have a comprehensive list of resources about the Department of Justice grants and payment management systems, which is also going to be in the slide deck that we will post and share with you all. Next slide, please.
Charlie, I'll do this. There's a training
I'm sorry, I
overview.
jumped in too soon, Andre.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So there's a training overview of Just Grant system for those of you who may have had federal grants, but you may have never had a DOJ grant, right? DOJ, or may have had one years ago. DOJ has a relatively new system known as Just Grants. So we want to make sure that you start to familiarize yourselves with it. I think that's going to be the way that you're going to also submit, grant adjustments and modifications. So you're probably already in Just Grants, but just know that there is a training overview that is available to you. Next slide. Again, this is something that you really should familiarize yourself with, especially because this particular program works heavily with subcontracting. And so you want to be familiar with the DOJ Grants Financial Guide. A great deal of this is up to date. It has some noteworthy pieces, just as we think about allowable costs and unallowable costs and reports. And believe it or not, it really serves as a go-to for sometimes what we find are little matters of confusion. So for those of you, there's a link there, but also it's always available, and it's something that I will be governed by, as well as Kevin. So just be mindful about that. Next slide. So this is just some wonderful resources and paces for you to familiarize yourself, and you can, request updates from the Office of Justice Programs, right? And so to kind of letting you know that message and data rates may apply, but you can, kind of get text from OJP and about the different things that are happening. Next slide. Of course, we want you to stay connected on our socials. We're broadening and our reach, and certainly through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, as well as the BJA website and OJP website. So again, they have a great new tool on the Office of Justice Programs website where you can really go in real time and look at a map of our nation and sort of kind of see, what other grant funding, not just Second Chance Act, but DOJ funding is also being administered to your particular state and sort of kind of whittled down to your county and your government. So just want to let you know that's like one of the latest tools up there at ojp.gov. So, and the last slide for me, but not for this, we want to familiarize yourself with all the contact information. Again, my name is Andre Bethea. I'm your Senior Policy Advisor. I will be working with Kevin Gates, who is your point of contact for BJA. He's a State Policy Advisor and Grants Management Specialist, again. I will also be leading the work and efforts that come out of the training and technical assistance, which is led by Charlie Francis. He's the deputy program at Council State Government's Justice Center, and him and his team will be reaching out to you. And lastly, Michael pointed out earlier that there is a performance management tool. Well, this is the actual help desk. I think there was a requirement for January 30th, and you all may think, well, we haven't done anything yet. And it's like, do you have to fill it out? Yes. Even if it's 0, yes. So you might want to reach out, not just to the help desk, but definitely have that conversation with Kevin Gates, because we know that sometimes grantees are like, it was due, I'm responsible, I didn't even do anything. And we just have the bureaucracy to tell you that, well, yeah, the award started October 1, 2023, but you're actually getting access, right, to us and to the work and not even your funds yet, right, by February 6th. So that's a bit of the bureaucracy, but we're hoping that it's not as arduous. It's just something you kind of go through and sort of kind of say no and 0 and a few other questions, and then you can upload that. So I'm passing it back on to you, Charlie. This is for you to close us out. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Andre. Okay, now it's my turn for real. So yeah. So now we've reached the end of all of our slides, and we have some time left. So now I'd like to open it up for Q&A. You can feel free to raise your hand, use the chat or the Q&A function. We'd love to take some time and take any and all questions that you have. Give it a minute or two for people to think about it a little bit.
Don't be afraid. Don't be shy. We have quite a few months to be together. Quite a few years. We might as well become acquainted.
That is accurate. We have a question in the chat about the recording. Anyone on my team want to take that about, or the BJ team about the recording? I know we answered about the slides earlier. Thank you, Mark. If anybody needs the slides sooner, though, I'm sure your TA coach would be happy to share them with you. Okay, we got a great BJA question in the chat now.
Michael, I'll just take this and say that there's no blanket answer. if you've received something that's a bit unclear that you think that you received from Zafra, we ask that you take the same question and email it to Kevin Gates so that you can have a recorded response. Michael, you want to jump in?
Sure. Yeah, so subawards do require approval. So you need to, again, submit a GAM just identifying the subaward and the amount of the subaward, and just so that we have it documented as part of the award. Typically, people mention it as partnerships in the original application, and so then it's a known. But if you are identifying new subaward, then we need to document that and approve it via GAM.
Yeah.
So if that's what Zafra said, that's true.
Thanks, Michael. Any additional questions? Either related to regulations and guidance or steps for getting started?
All right. I think it could close without Charlie.
All right, you want to wrap us up, Andre?
Again, congratulations to everyone. Looking forward to becoming acquainted with each and one of you and each one of the projects, a part of the fiscal year 23 cohort. Myself and Kevin Gates, Michael Dever, we're all here at BJA, and certainly our partners at the Council of State Governments Justice Center are eager to take your questions and to get to know you and work with you. Thank you so much, and know that we will all be in contact with you, either through the PTA provider, and certainly start emailing Kevin Gates should you have any questions. I thank you all for attending this orientation webinar. Take care and look forward to working with you in the coming weeks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.